Let's start with the classic mistakes. Let's talk about cleaning the joints of ceramic or natural stone tiles. When tiles are installed, excess mortar often comes out through the tile's joints. If the excess mortar is not cleaned right away, you will need more aggressive tools to remove it, such as a grinder in this case. Watch out also for utility knives, as they're quite sharp. When we get too close, we're playing with fire. In this case, the heating cable should have been installed 8 inches away from the ventilation damper, as it is considered a heating system. We also have to be careful when it comes to transitions between floor coverings. The transitions sometimes happen at the door level and sometimes at the frame. If you can't know for sure where the floor covering ends, it's usually a good idea to install the cable 2 inches away from the wall. Most breakages are accidents. When I'm asked what the best way to cover a heating cable is, I always recommend a self-leveler. It is the easiest way to keep trowels away from the cables. Trowels can get quite sharp when they are constantly rubbed against plywood and concrete. In this case, we can easily imagine that the edge of a trowel accidentally nicked the cable. I'm sometimes asked who was responsible for a cable's breakage. Sometimes it's obvious and sometimes it isn't. In these situations, I explained to the client that I was not present during the installation and can only speculate on what happened. In this picture, I can easily imagine a heavy object being dragged across the floor. Maybe it was the tiler's bucket, or the carpenter's table saws, or even a toolbox. Who knows? Most probably a grinder. In other cases, which are fortunately less frequent, we're faced with human actions or errors. In this example, the cable was flattened with a hammer. Here is a case where ignorance can lead to a real fire hazard. In the picture, we see that the excess cable was simply laid in the floor between 2 joists. This is the exact type of breakage we cannot fix because the cable cannot be shortened and the excess remaining in the air is damaged beyond repair. Here we have an example of a cable embedded in concrete, which is attached to the metal mesh with tie wraps and seems to be heading deeper into the slab. Why? We would have to ask the installer. Please note that we do not recommend installing tie wraps to secure cables onto a metal mesh. These ties prevent the cable from moving, so if you snag the cable, the stress will be focused where the rigid tie wrap is. While it is not the case when the installation is done with the tape provided with the heating cable. You probably guessed it, but in this case, the plumber probably had to widen the hole to get the pipes through the floor. Who is the culprit? The plumber or the cable installer? Regardless, the heating cable must never be installed under a fixed object. When heating cables are being installed, I always worry about the plumbing. Even if we think we are far enough away from the holes, we have to keep in mind that the anchoring system may be wider than the actual holes. And sometimes the plumbing has not even been installed yet. In this case, the plumber drilled a hole after the floor covering was installed, not knowing that heating cables were present. The famous Toto toilet. Some toilet models require the installation of a flange that carries the drain towards the back wall. In the picture, we've circled the spots where the flange has to be screwed to the floor. If unfortunately you get closer than 6 inches from the drain, or you decided to run the heating cable behind the toilet, it is quite possible that you will end up with a screw going through the heating cable. Some people think we can repair a heating cable with electric tape. Unfortunately, that's not the case. The hard part is not to repair the cable, but rather to locate the breakage, which requires specialized and costly equipment. So, if you're going to do a repair, might as well get a proper repair kit to do the work correctly. Neither silicone nor hot glue will yield good results. In this case, someone had good intentions when they secured to the floor the panel hiding the side of a fridge. Unfortunately, the screw went through the heating cable. When we get a call saying that a heated floor is not working, one of the first questions we ask is if work was done on the floor recently. In this picture, the installation of a door stopper led to a breakage. An error that we are thankfully seeing less and less is the use of staples to secure the heating cable to the subfloor. We have no control over the depth at which the staple will penetrate the subfloor. Some staples may not touch the cable while others, such as in this picture, will crush the cable. Remember that during heating cycles, the cable expands and contracts, and these movements are sufficient to create a premature wear at the spot where the cable is held by a staple. There are also staples intended for other uses, such as the one in this picture that is meant to hold the membrane in place. In this case, two non-compliance lead to the decision to not repair the breakage. The use of a carpet underlay as well as a lack of mortar can not only lead to the cable's shorter lifetime, but also presents a fire hazard. The cable must be installed at least half an inch away from any exposed combustible surface. Yes, we can use staples to secure the installation gauges, but we have to make sure to avoid the cable. Occasionally, the joint from the heating cable to the cold lead or the joint at the end of the cable may present a problem. These repairs are covered by Flextherm's warranty as long as the installation is done correctly. In this case, we noticed two installation non-compliances, that is the absence of mortar and the fact that the joint is partially installed under the wall. The two conditions can reduce the cable's lifetime. How to explain a hole on the underside of the heating cable? We can easily come to the conclusion that the floor was not properly cleaned from the start, or that work was done while the cables were installed but not yet covered.